Hello again, and welcome back to week 4 of year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is day 3. We're continuing through the Gospel of John. This time we get to chapter 2. So last time we saw the Lord call his first disciples, beginning with the 2 that St. John the Baptist sent to follow him, and continuing with their brothers, James and Peter, and then with Philip and Nathanael of Bethsaida. Having called these disciples and told them that they will see the heavens open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man, which is a nice reference that for having just read, next time will be next week about Jacob seeing this same vision. Anyway, now we will see the Lord begin his ministry and his miracles, although a little bit earlier than intended, apparently. So, on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they took them, and they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now, draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine, and did not know where it came from, although the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs, in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this he went down to Capernaum with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they remained there a few days. The Passover of the Jews was near, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple he found people selling cattle, sheep, and doves, and the money changers seated at their tables, making a whip of cords. He drove all of them out of the temple, both the sheep and the cattle. He also poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. He told those who were selling the doves, "Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." The Jews then said to him, "What sign can you show us for doing this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews then said, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and will you raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking of the temple of his body. After he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the word that Jesus had spoken. When he was in Jerusalem during the Passover festival, many believed in his name because they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus, on his part, would not entrust himself to them, because he knew all people, and needed no one to testify about anyone, for he himself knew what was in everyone. So, we read in the church the first part of this, the wedding at Cana, very frequently, because that's the normal scripture reading from the gospel for a wedding service. However, we don't usually see it read aloud together with what comes after, and this bit that comes after is really quite significant, because we see in the 3 synoptic gospels, we see the Lord go into the temple and drive out the money changers and cleanse the space, but it happens after Palm Sunday. It happens right before his passion, and it is, we've said here, it is the moment when he lays claim to the temple as his Father's house, and when God therefore finally returns to the temple, although he did not return to the temple when it was first built in a very small and mean way after the Babylonian exile, and he did not return when the Maccabeans tried to rededicated. He did not return at any of these points, but now the Lord has come. We've said all of this, but that happens at the end of the Lord's ministry in those Gospels. John is clearly interacting with those Gospels here. He knows everyone is familiar with them, so why does he put it so far ahead in the narrative? And I suspect there may be a few things going on. John is perhaps by this signaling, I'm not just going to tell the same story you've heard before, but he's also, at every point, he's emphasizing that the Lord is Most High God from the very beginning. It's not as though he grows in his consciousness of this. This is something that's present from the very beginning. And maybe that's the sort of thing that people were saying, reading the other three evangelists and the way in which they articulate the narrative. Maybe John is wanting to make sure he corrects that and says, yes, that's when it happened, but he could have done this at any point. We don't really know which way it's going. We shouldn't, however, understand any of the Gospels as simply giving us a full and complete narrative of everything that Jesus did. John, at the end of his Gospel, is explicit in saying we can't expect that. We don't expect that because. As he says, if we tried to write everything that Jesus ever did, the world itself couldn't contain the books that would be written. What the gospel writers are doing is they are telling these stories, they're stringing them together to make a point. They're preaching a sermon effectively with episodes of the life of the Lord. They are presenting him and his purpose to us. And John does it a little bit differently from the others to really emphasize and correct and clarify a point that the others have made, but that maybe those who read those others have misunderstood, and that's probably important. It's not helpful if Mark and Matthew and Luke tell a story about the Lord being Most High God, become human, entering into the temple and laying claim to it. And people are arguing, well, he didn't do that until the end. That must be that he didn't realize who he was until then. So we're not sure how it is exactly that the Son of God has become, human, but clearly it's complicated a little bit. So, anyway, I think this is striking. John presents the Lord as explicitly coming as the pre-eternal Son of God from the very beginning, and that's important, especially in the face of Gnostic assaults and attempts to reduce Jesus to just another created being in anticipation of the Arian heresy coming later. Besides that, it's worth noting that Jesus blesses the marriage, but he also transforms it. He changes the water into wine. And in this way, too, we have to remember Christian marriage is not exactly the same as what marriage had been for the people of the covenant before that. And the role of men, the role of women is transformed by the Lord's coming, because in the Lord's coming, the curse of Adam and the curse of Eve are both overturned and healed. We could say more about that, but for now, I'll let you all go, and we'll see you next week. God bless you.